Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope all of you are doing well, and today I've got more make your own cards to show off, although this time these are from the 2014 version of the game that I'm going to show off today, and I picked these because they have some rather strange effects on them. Well, some of them do. Others are a bit more normal, but I thought were interesting to show off since I don't have effects like them in the original game. Now, a lot of these are from the action cards from that game, but I'll have characters to show off in future episodes if I decide to make this into a series. But I wanted to start off today with Psychic Terrain, an area action card, which is known as terrain action in the current game. Its ability states that whenever a player plays an instant action card, which are basically like the normal actions from the current game, he or she flips a coin. If heads, that player plays the card normally. But if tails, that player may not play that card, and the player's opponent may use that card instead if he or she has enough power to play it, and does everything else required to play it. Either way, the card goes in its owner's discard pile. So, it's a pretty expensive area action, but it causes normal actions that players play to fail 50% of the time, which can kind of slow things down and can be really annoying to deal with. Up next is High Noon Standoff, an instant action card, so if this were in the current game, it would be a normal action card. 3 cost. Each player chooses one of their in-play characters. That character stays in play while the rest of the characters get shuffled into their owner's decks. Attached cards get discarded, so it's kind of an interesting little board wipe effect that's kind of cheap. But the one downside is your opponent gets to choose the character that they get to keep. But you do as well, which can be kind of useful. But of course, if your opponent only has one character on the field, this doesn't really do anything to your opponent. Up next, we got some counter cards. First one here is Lifeguard. This is a 1-cost counter action. When your opponent directly attacks your life points, you reduce the amount of life points lost by half, rounded up to the nearest one. So while this can save you sometimes, it does struggle a bit because sometimes your opponent is able to deal so much damage to the point where even reducing that damage by half isn't even enough to save you from being defeated. Up next is Regroup, a counter action card that costs 5. And if this artwork looks a little familiar, it's because I've used it in another card I made in the current game called Tactical Planning. Regroup has a much different effect, though. It states that whenever one of your characters gets attacked this turn, you get to search your deck for a card and put it into your hand. Then you get to shuffle your deck. So it's a nice tutor for just about any card in your deck, but you can only play it if you get attacked. And it's a little expensive to do so, but might be a little playable if I were to put this in the current game. Up next is Double-Edged Dance, which is kind of one of my favorite cards from this season of the Make Your Own card game. It's a 5-cost instant action, or a normal action. And it states that when you attack this turn, you double the attack of the attacking character. So that's pretty good. If your opponent loses life points as a result of the attack, you lose life points equal to half the life points your opponent's lost. So this can help you get in some big damage for like a nice late game push to help finish off your opponent. You do have that downside of it damaging you if you do damage to your opponent, but if it ends up being the last attack you use, it's not a huge deal. Next is another counteraction card called I'm Taking You With Me. This is a 5-cost card that reads, you may play this card when one of your characters gets knocked out by an opponent's attack. Your opponent loses life points equal to your knocked out character's power cost, and the attacking character gets discarded. Which, there is a little bit of oddities with how the text is read, because when you're destroying a character with an action, at least in this season of the Make Your Own card game, I've referred to it as discarding cards rather than knocking out characters. This was before I kind of made that terminology changed. You can see it here with another card. This is Burst Attack from Season 2 of Make Your Owns. Instead of saying simply KO target character your opponent controls, it says discard one of your opponent's in-play character cards. Any cards attached to that character return to your opponent's hand. So you can kind of see how some of the terminology was back then. It wasn't quite as fixed as it is in the current game, or refined, I guess you could say. Up next is Payback Attack, another counter action card with the cost of 4. And it states, if one of your in-play characters would be knocked out by an opponent's attack, you may use this card. On your next turn, you may attack using 2 different characters. So this could be a way to get in some more attacks if you had a board full of characters. And also wanted to draw some attention to the artwork. Yes, that is Knuckles from the Sonic series. The old version of Make Your Own had a lot of characters from licensed properties. I mean, this was a game that was primarily played by my brother and myself, so we didn't really share this with a lot of people. But I think if I were to put this card into the game, it wouldn't take a ton to change up the artwork to include some more original characters. And speaking of Sonic characters, we have Sonic and Eggman here on Truce, which is an instant action card, and this has a wildly different effect from the version of Truce that is in the current Make Your Own card game. This version of Truce states, your opponent chooses one of the following. Either both players search their decks for a card and puts it into his or her hand, or you draw a card. So, if your opponent agrees, you both get to tutor for something, and that could be kind of nice, although sometimes your opponent may just say no and you just get to draw 1 card for 2 power, which isn't always the greatest thing to be doing. Finally, I have a cycle of arena action cards or terrains. It's a cycle of sword shrines. The first of these is the green sword shrine with probably the most straightforward effect. 5 cost. Characters cost 2 power less to play to a minimum of 1. So if you're playing a lot of characters, this is very helpful for reducing their costs. Then you have the yellow sword shrine here. Another 5 cost arena. Players lose 1/2 of their power, rounded up, at the beginning of their turn. So this can also slow down your opponents late in the game by giving them only half of their available power to use. And then finally there's Blue Sword Shrine, another 5 cost arena. This can really speed up the game with its effect. It states that players may choose to spend life points instead of power to play characters or actions. Can be really useful if you happen to play this on your turn and you can really just finish off your opponent. I'm not really sure if I'd put this one in the game, though. There's also a red sword shrine, I think, in this cycle, but I haven't been able to find it. But other than that, that does it for this little video. Thank you very much for watching. Definitely leave a like if you enjoyed this kind of look into the history of the Make Your Own card game, and comment below if you want to see any of these in the current game. I might be able to make something work with that. Anyway, I'll see you in whatever video I upload next, and take care.